And get started. How's it sound?
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Suchita. I'm a fourth year environmental studies major with an emphasis in technology management. I didn't really want to write a paper for my final project, so I just told Professor that, so we decided to do a presentation instead. So a little bit about me is I used to work for the County of Santa Barbara in the Department of Energy. And whenever we did any kind of promoting, because what we promoted was an energy efficient program for homeowners, so that, like to insulate the attics or get more sustainable home. And we would provide them rebates and incentives. And to promote this, my bosses always told me to say, we're the County of Santa Barbara. That's our main marketing tool. County of Santa Barbara, County of Santa Barbara. And that was what we told people, so that would give them authority, so that people would be like, okay, that's a valuable tool to use. So I wanted to see how this same idea would be applied to some of our commercial and tourist attractions. And the one I'm going to really concentrate today on is Seafood Watch. It's a Monterey Bay application for sustainable seafood. So first, I'm going to ask you a couple definitions. What is nonprofit to you guys? Does anyone want to go? Nonprofit? Raise your hand, guys.
It means they don't do it for an economic purpose.
Yeah, that's pretty close to what the dictionary.com definition is. Not established for the purpose of making profit, not entered into for money. The next thing I'm going to ask is, what is the definition of sustainable? Oh shoot, okay.
You gotta
Sorry. Right. So the next one I'm going to ask is sustainable. Does anyone know the definition of sustainable?
It's something that can be used over time without it running out, or used in a way that it doesn't run out.
Exactly, and that's also really close to the dictionary.com definition. The quality of not being harmful to the environment, of depleting natural resources, and thereby supporting long-term ecological balance. And the last one I'm going to ask, that's close to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, is what does aquarium mean to you all? Anyone want to answer that?
Place that just displays fish and other sea animals.
Yeah.
Kind of like
A glass-sided tank in which fish or other creatures are kept. So what I'm going to be concentrating on is how an aquarium that keeps animals captive can tell us how we should fish our own seafood and how we should eat it. Which I didn't understand is that we're treating, an enterprise like that is treating their animals so badly by keeping them in a tank where they really aren't treated well. They're in their own bathtub. And they're telling us how to actually eat our own food, how to fish our own food. So this is the application they have provided us. It's Seafood Watch. It's available on the App Store and Google Play. And the features that it includes is it has seafood recommendations. You can search for seafood quickly. You can search sushi by the Japanese name, and you can find which participating restaurants and stores around you have this seafood that is sustainable. So the other links that are provided on the Monterey Bay Seafood Watch website is not only sustainable seafood that's that you can eat, but also how it pertains to human health, sustainable recipes using all the sustainable seafood, wild seafood, aquaculture, fishing and farming methods, and international resources. So basically international partners. And so again, I was asking, how can we support an enterprise that keeps animals captive and tell us what to do with our seafood? How do you do that? How do you convince an audience that if you're already doing something bad, to how they should live their life? Do you guys know anything?
I mean, I think that the aquarium itself is kind of a necessary evil. That's kind of how I see the cities in some aspect. I mean, I think obviously on the conditions that we're in, but it's I believe in another class someone said they're ambassadors to the oceans and stuff. So they show us they give us insight on how they live, how they act, how they love you.
Exactly. What resource do you think they use the most to show people that they're that ambassador, that they're that powerful? Do you know what resource they use?
No.
They have friends. these are their partners in, all of these are their partners in making them a big corporation. When you look at these partners, you're gonna be like, wow, Pete's Coffee, like, oh my gosh, they support Monterey Bay. Obviously, they're convincing. Obviously, they're a good thing to be there because all of these items you use day-to-day basis. You know what I mean? Like, you get coffee every day, you get Chipotle. So obviously, if you use this on a day-to-day basis, whatever you use as a consumer, you're gonna be like, yeah, Monterey Bay's doing something good. If they're supporting them, I should support them too. So, this is the Monterey Bay's definition of sustainable. They consider seafood sustainable when it is fished or farmed in ways that have minimal impact on ocean health and ensure the availability of seafood for future generations. So what you do on this application is basically you would search it up, search anything, like any seafoods up, which I would show you a little bit later. And these are the 3 options they give you, or categories they put the seafood in. So the first one is best choices. So by first, they're well managed, they're caught or farmed in ways that cause little harm or no harm to other wildlife. The next one is gold alternatives, or good alternatives. So you can buy it, but you have to make sure that there might be some problems, might be a little sketchy. And then the last one is avoid. You just don't want to buy it. You know what I mean? Like, it's gonna harm like some kind of marine life out there. And so here's how you would search it up. So let's say you're just making dinner for someone, you know, and you're trying to make them salmon dinner. So you would search up salmon, and then there would be a lovely picture of your salmon right there. And then if you're trying to like trying to get domestic or imported or farmed or wild, you can pick one of those cool categories. And then here you go. Whereas there's 14 results of best choice, 30 results of, you know, I don't know if you should get it or not, and 11 you should avoid. And then with this, you also get kind of like a information about the salmon, like if like a little bit about it, you know, just like a little like eHarmony about it, you know. And then here are some examples of the avoid, good alternative, and the best choice. So these are some of the categories. But what I'm going to primarily be concentrating on is what certifies all these seafoods as sustainable. And the number one eco-labeling scheme is Marine Stewardship Council. And what they do is they look at these fisheries and they see if they're sustainable with all their fishing practices. And then they eco-label them, and then Monterey Bay Aquarium uses that to show you if that fishery is sustainable or not. So that's the connection between them. And where have we heard of the Marine Stewardship Council? Well, I don't know if you guys remember this, but during our documentary of End of the Line, we talked about a documentary about the devastating effects of overfishing. And they talked about a society called the Marine Conservation Society, who basically wants to make sure that these animals are treated right and we make sure we avoid overfishing. And what they really say is the best way to check if your seafood is sustainable, they reference again Marine Stewardship Council. And so the similarity that Marine Conservation Society has with the Monterey Bay Aquarium is that they're large groups, but in different areas. The Monterey Bay is in the US, this is in the UK. But both of them reference the Marine Stewardship Council as an eco-labeling device, and that it's accurate and it's really relevant and it's a great way to like reference your fish. So this is the big question. Who is this famous and accredited Marine Stewardship Council that everyone recognizes? So I kind of made like a Wikipedia description of it just because like that's what I would use. And this is the Wikipedia definition of the Marine Stewardship Council. It is an independent, nonprofit organization that sets standard for sustainable fishing. And this is the official description of it. The Marine Stewardship Council is an international nonprofit organization established to address the problem of unsustainable fishing and safeguard seafood supplies for the future. So here's the timeline of how this famous Marine Stewardship Council started. It began in 1997, And basically their initiative there was to certify all these fisheries to make sure that all the seafood they provide are sustainable. And in 2000, they certified its first fishery. And how they got their money was just through like founding grants and kind of just like educational purposes. But they honestly didn't get, like honestly as a fishery, like they wouldn't want that label, or they don't really care because they're not that known. And how do you get your label out there? You make a friend. And so they entered their agreement with Walmart. And so when you're doing like any kind of like putting like a label on something, the licensing fee is like included. And first for the MSC, it started at 7% only of their budget without Walmart and everything. Once Walmart came in, and a lot of Walmart's other friends, it was 49.4% of their whole entire product is their licensing fees. So basically them joining agreements with other corporations such as Target and Whole Foods, who have said that we want to make all our seafood sustainable. So they grew from 7% to 49.4%. And they grew like $1 million corporation within 5 years. So that's really big for them. But then that also, if you think about it, if they grew that much financially, that probably changes the way they think about things and how they go about things. If they're really trying to make things sustainable, or they're trying to get agreements with large corporations to get their name out there, to get more revenue, and to be known as an environmental corporation. So it's not like the Marine Stewardship Council actually certifies these fisheries themselves. They hire commercial auditors, third-party commercial auditors, to certify these fisheries. So basically, each of these commercial auditors will look at one of these fisheries, and they would see like the guidelines each of this MSC has given them, and they're like, okay, like this works out. They're like pretty flexible about it. And each of these certifications are $15,000 to $120,000. So a fishery would pay, like some fisheries paid $150,000 to get certified as sustainable. And it works out for some of them. I mean, the tuna fishery in Pacific, like their price the fishermen received was increased by 32%. So the big question I'm gonna ask all of you is, would you pay more for a fish, like a seafood item that is sustainable? I mean, that is the right way to fish as seafood, or like get seafood. Would you pay more? Can I get, yeah.
I would, just because, well, I kind of understand why people wouldn't, because they don't have jobs, but personally, just because I don't have a job, like when I go to like Costco, if I see something that is like organic or non-GMO, I'll buy that. Like an extra like $2 or $3 doesn't make a difference to me, just because I have a job, but like it might be different for those who don't have jobs.
But do you all think it's right to price something that's farmed the correct way? Is it right to do that?
Yeah, I think full cost pricing and sustainability is a really good way to get people to be conscious of externalities in production. And just like with the factory farming industry, we either have to completely cut meat and fish out of our diets, or we have to make sure that it's farmed sustainably. So I think the mentality should be shifted towards like paying more for better quality and maybe eating less than eating a lot of meat that's really bad for you.
Exactly. The Whole Foods would, oh, yeah.
I think it's also a really good incentive to fishermen. If they're getting 32% more money by fishing sustainably, they're probably gonna go fish sustainably instead of like just destroying the environment.
Of course, and that's why Whole Foods agrees with it as well, is that Whole Foods actually prices all their fish that is sustainable 10% more. Just because they know, yeah.
I just wanted to say that when there's like an extra price increase, I don't think it's going somewhere. It's going to the people who sustain their fish. Like it's gonna cost more to sustainably catch their fish. So
To get
you're
better
obviously
technology
paying
and
for that,
everything.
and you're essentially like paying to support the actions of them doing that. So I don't think it like goes somewhere. Like it's worth the extra money.
Of course,
Yeah.
yeah. So Whole Foods does agree with that, so that's why it's definitely a great device to use. And, but honestly, like, even though this is great that they do price these products more and everything, there's many controversies that is located with this Enterprise and Marine Stewardship Council. There were several conservation groups that actually objected towards a lot of the certifications that Marine Stewardship Council has provided. they gave out 19 objections. And to give out an objection, like say like they think that a fishery is not being sustainable, it costs $8,000 to even object to this firm. And so when they did object to this firm, all these 19 fisheries, that's 12% of all their fisheries, right? And then to put it in perspective, that's 35% of their certified seafood. So 35% of that seafood you're eating could be not sustainable and could be provided by unsustainable means. And the biggest problem is that out of these 19 official objections, only one certification was upheld. So then the rest, the Marine Stewardship Council just let it go. So I'm going to start off with some controversies that have come up with Marine Stewardship Council. I don't know if you all know what NPR is, but it's a national public radio, and it's one of the accredited news resources we have around the United States. It's a large nonprofit, and they basically kind of look and investigate in a lot of these councils. And the one council they investigated in was the Marine Stewardship Council. And I'm just going to remind you guys again that that's the council that provided the eco-certification for Monterey Bay Aquarium and Marine Conservation Society. So the first controversy that was brought about was one of the objections was swordfish. The swordfish the variety is located in Canada. And these fisheries, when they're obtaining the swordfish, they actually capture other animals as well. For every swordfish that is obtained for seafood meats, 2 sharks die. And that's actually a problem because we don't want animals die. But then when this conservation group actually went up to Marine Stewardship Council and told them that, Marine Stewardship Council said, well, honestly, these sharks aren't endangered or threatened. So it's not actually like we're harming the environment. It's only harming the environment if these are endangered and they're gonna leave the environment soon. So they don't really care. The next one is hoki. So basically the gear that's used to obtain hoki, which is I think the fishing method is trawling, and it causes significant damage to little animals such as sea corals and sponges. And certifiers actually they accepted this fishery even though there was a lot of seabirds that were killed too. It was the same thing as the shark problem in the past slide, where seabirds were getting killed, and it was over that actual bycatch IDS level. And the government was like, okay, you guys can't do that. That's too high. That's way too much. Seabirds are getting killed. They still certified it. So it kind of shows you, does the government actually play a role into these fisheries? Because the Marine Stewardship Council still went through with it and didn't really go against it. And the next one I'm going to talk about is the toothfish. The toothfish, it's actually pretty illegal to trade this because it's a very prized item. It's very it doesn't really overcook apparently. I don't really eat seafood, so I really wouldn't know that.
The Patagonian fish.
Yeah.
Chilean sea bass.
Is that in the
That's its market name.
Oh, thanks. It's really expensive in restaurants, and honestly, apparently it's a great fish. But basically that there's this fishery that the Marine Stewardship Council has approved that had the toothfish, right? And actually, their methods of this fish is actually, it's disgusting, is that a research group actually took 36 samples of their toothfish from this fishery. 3 out of that toothfish weren't even from that region, and a couple of them weren't even toothfish. So already right there, 1/6 of that 36 sample weren't even that category of toothfish. And it just shows you what kind of information is the fisheries providing to these people. And to put things in perspective, why would they want to get this much toothfish, or why do they want to lie about it? Because 1,500 tons of this fish can get you $83 million. So that's why you get so much money out of it. It's fine to change it up with unsustainable needs. And so why do these fisheries actually do things like this? Why do they, like, why doesn't Marine Stewardship Council kind of check up on them? Well, Marine Stewardship Council only like re-verifies your agreement every 5 years. And so the first year you just have to make at least 80% of the standards. And then after that, you don't really have to. And then once you come to that 5-year deadline, most of these fisheries actually only make the minimal standards. And they barely even like make the standards for the Marine Stewardship Council. So it shows that all these seafood that's sustainable, it might just be the label. And so when NPR released this report about all these seafoods and everything, the Marine Stewardship Council came back with this quote. They were really fast with their press releases, by the way, and they said the MSC regrets that NPR coverage in this instance presented its listeners with reporting that did not meet NPR's customary high journalistic standards. So that just shows they're just putting down another organization. So just to put things back, is that Marine Stewardship Council, what I just talked about, all these controversies with them, and how they how all their certifications, there's so many certifications that aren't even correct. This organization is used as a reference by Monterey Bay Aquarium and Marine Conservation Society as a highly regarded application and reference for sustainable seafood. So my biggest question to all of you is, would you still use this application now that you know that the references it uses aren't even that accurate?
So, first things first, are you saying that the Seafood Watch gets their information and the ratings from the MSC?
They reference it for some of the seafood, for wild seafood, but not all the seafood.
And where do they place that rating of the MSC seafood?
They place it as almost equal. So
As in which category? Green, yellow, or red?
the MSC. Well, MSC tells you which fish are sustainable and what are not sustainable.
Yes, and where do they place that rating on their own system?
Well, what do you, if they say let's say they say a salmon is sustainable, then
I don't think the MSC, do they sell fish?
No. What I'm saying is Seafood Watch has rated MSC's certifications on their own program. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm nervous because I have tons of adrenaline in my system. It happens every time I speak. Let's say I type in shrimp on my Seafood Watch app and pull up, scroll down till I see MSC. Marine Stewardship Council certified labels are only labeled as good alternatives.
So that means that the marine, for some, it's not like that's the only reference for Monterey Bay Aquarium, but Monterey Bay Aquarium does use them for a lot of their references. So for that one that says a good alternative, that means that they use the Marine Stewardship Council as a reference for that variety of fish. And so basically maybe Marine Stewardship Council is like, oh, that's a good alternative. So Monterey Bay is like, that's one of our references. They said that's a good alternative, so we're gonna use that.
That's actually not how Seafood Watch gets the ratings. They actually have this whole system that they set up with the chart. The reasons MSC is listed as a potential thing you can look at is, I can read it off here, is
Well, the thing is, the Monterey Bay Aquarium.
Seafood Watch recommends you purchase Marine Stewardship Council MSC certified fishes, but the reason it says that is because I've actually researched this for a class last quarter of the fact that it's basically their green rating is equivalent to Monterey Bay's Aquarium's good alternative rating. In other words, their criteria that they use doesn't go nearly as far as Seafood Watch's criteria.
I understand, but that's not what I'm saying. I was saying that they do use it as a reference. I wasn't saying that is their intermediate, their actual scores of everything. Monterey Bay is a different system, but I was saying is they use it as a reference, and I'm saying they use a very large reference that even Marine Conservation Society uses, and that reference isn't that viable. Monterey Bay, I can clarify with all of you, is that Monterey Bay does not use a third-party certifier kind of group, but they do use Marine Stewardship Council for a lot of the bases for a lot of the fish. I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of the fish.
Well,
As important as Michael's comments are, I think it might be helpful to ask other people
Yeah.
to kind of contribute here.
Well, going back to the question, even if the Monterey Bay Aquarium did use MSC like 100% completely in everything, I think it's still better to like have the app than not have the app. Because, okay, sure, maybe it's not completely accurate, but if I look at the app and it says, this is a terribly sustained fish, avoid it at all costs, I mean, it probably is a terribly caught fish, and it's probably still useful for me to know to avoid it. So like 50% accuracy is better than no accuracy at all.
Exactly, and that's what I agree with too, is because it's really hard to provide environmental information. I'll get this, sorry. I was gonna say, it's really hard to provide environmental information the correct way, and that's why I was saying is MSC, when they first began, like, they couldn't convince people, and there wasn't even social media back then, so how are they gonna convince people that they're a viable group for environmental? They have to convince people by having friends, like Walmart, who has a large consumer base, where they can kind of put their toes in and say, hey, like, we're a great resource of Walmart, and you know what? You can't be truthful in the whole entire marketplace. That's the difference if you mix environmental studies with business. What were you saying?
Yeah, I use Seafood Watch all the time, and I consider myself, like, now you kind of shook my, reality, but I consider myself like sustainable in some sense. So, I think seeing as there are no other options that I've seen, and like really like carbon options, I mean, beggars can't really be choosers.
Exactly.
So, I am still gonna, obviously like look at the MSC. However, I think in terms of the Seafood Watch and others, I think I would kind of refrain from the good alternatives and kind of like just look at,
The top, yeah,
yeah.
that makes sense.
I think this the project's really good. You're not necessarily putting MSC on trial. You're more of like holding them accountable, which is good, and I think that people need to have that hold themselves responsible for looking into things and making sure that the information they're getting is right. I also think that you're right with some kind of information is better than no information. So even if 50% of the information is good, then that's better than nothing. But it is a good idea to look into it and provide this kind of information. Okay, not everything you read is 100% correct. Most of it might be, but not all of it is. And you gave an interesting perspective on that.
Thank you so much. I mean, you, yeah.
So yeah, I definitely agree with the whole something is better than nothing, but I think from my perspective, what really gets me is the people, and something that we've kind of talked about in this class is like, people who want to be educated about these things are the ones that are, and so, if you go to like Albertsons, they don't have these, I guess like labeling and whatnot, like in their sections. You go to a restaurant like Brophy Rose and you ask them, oh, where's this caught? And half the time they don't know. So I think in terms of that, whether, it's good alternatives or great or bad, I think that is something that definitely needs to be addressed like within the future, and like the MSC, like if they really want to get out there and try to make a change in the way people are eating and thinking about seafood, I think that they definitely need to broaden their scope over who they're addressing, and not just, environmental studies majors who are like, of course I'm gonna eat sustainably, when that's just kind of like who we are as a people. So
Yeah, it's good. Is anyone else? I would love to hear all your perspectives. I really want to hear everyone's perspective. Yes, Patricia. Yes.
I think that one of the things that will make this like process better as the market continues to grow more sustainably, because it kind of has to, if we don't want fishery collapse, is to have something like this app in conjunction with more informative labeling in a supermarket, because it's one thing to have the sustainable label on a fish, but for somebody who, I don't know who said it, but yeah, I mean, that's for us, the people who are looking for it. The people who aren't looking for it are just gonna see the extra couple of dollars, and if they have kids, or if they have, somebody that they need to feed, they're gonna think, price over anything. So instead of just having, okay, this is like a sustainable thing as a label, you have to put in the store, like, what is sustainability? And you have to hold the people accountable, who are selling these fish, to make sure that they, one, know where they're coming from. Like in a restaurant, like if you ask, where is this fish caught, they should really know, or at least they should know if it's sustainably caught or not. And then maybe have an explanation of like what sustainability is and how that affects the overall market. But I had never heard of Seafood Watch, and it's definitely something that I think is yeah, I mean, better than nothing. Like, maybe with more consumer demand, then they'll be, they'll put more information into it or have more credible sources. But I wonder if the mislabeling of sources is because of the government influence that you mentioned, because I know that, environmental policy really isn't where it should be, and the people who are running the environmental agencies in the government aren't necessarily the most environmental people themselves. Or if it's an oversight on the part of the MSC that they would correct if they could. But to me, it seems like if you have to pay that much to object to a sustainability rating, then probably it's probably intentional or has some intention behind it.
Well, I was actually reading a lot of like fisheries like testimonies on how they feel about Seafood Watch, especially the ones that work in governmental agencies, and they actually really don't like it. Because it kind of insults the fishery, like, governmental side, is because, like, the government, like I said, they look at the fish, like, that needs to be obtained for that year, right? And then they tell these fisheries, like, this is how much needs to be obtained, this is an endangered species or whatever, right? And then the fisheries, on that information, they'll sell how much they can and whatever is safe. But what their argument is that Seafood Watch kind of just tells the consumers, like, fisheries don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to manage their product, and that we need to tell the consumers that what you need to be the one to fix your opinion on it. So MSC came back with that report and told them that actually we're just trying to educate the consumers, and we're just really trying to help them out. So that makes sense, right? But a lot of the governmental agencies don't really like them, especially.
How far are you to the end of your?
Oh, this is like 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Suchita, we're really running out of
Okay,
time. So
yeah.
either it's gotta end like in 2 minutes or.
Okay, for sure. Yeah.
I will go fast. I guess I don't think the fact that they're insulting the fisheries should really come into play. Like, yes, the fisheries are going to be angry, but when it comes down to it, it's just like, are they doing it sustainably or not? That's what we want to know.
And that's the big question of the thing is I really even though we don't have that many applications and resources, we have one that's getting there. And it's really hard to start something from the beginning all core correctly. Sometimes you have to cheat. Like Professor said, sometimes you're allowed to cheat in the world. And that's the best way sometimes because you need help. You can't build this environmental branch without getting help. And I just really want to thank all of you today for listening to me. I really hope that I engaged you in this interesting subject. And I really want to thank my professor for helping me out continuously. And yeah, thanks.
12 minutes. Do you want to rush that or do you want to do it on Friday?
So sorry.
So I'm perfectly happy we can do it on Friday.
Do you think, is that going to do? Is that okay?
We'll figure a way around it. I don't want to rush you.
I don't think 12 minutes is good.
Do you think it will be enough?
Well, I don't.
I don't think it's going to be enough either, so we'll do it on Friday. So, Suchita, I'm sorry to have rushed you like that. Is there anything else that you want to